She didn't know it yet, but that night would be the last time she breathed in the cold air of Surrey. That evening, Maple Batalia. 19 years old, a bright pre-med student at Simon Fraser University, was exactly who everyone knew her to be. Radiant, full of life. With that laugh that could light up a room. She dreamed of becoming a doctor, but she also had a foot in the world of art. Maple had already acted in The Secret Circle, and for her, it felt as if the universe was finally opening its doors. Yet, amid the clatter of keyboards and the whisper of pages in the library, someone was watching her, a figure hidden in the shadows of the parking garage's third floor. No one knew how long he had been waiting, only that, when the clock struck 10:22 p.m., the night air was shattered by 3 gunshots. Students screamed and ran. Officer Kevin Jeffrey was among the first to arrive. Between 2 cars, he found her, Maple, lying in a pool of blood, spreading across the concrete floor. She was still breathing, barely. 3 bullets had torn through her body. Multiple stab wounds marked the back of her head. When Jeffrey had to tell her mother, she grabbed the back of his head, pressed her forehead against his plate, and cried out, "Bring me justice." That plea became the start of a relentless hunt, a case that would drag investigators through a maze of obsession, jealousy, and emotional decay. Because this wasn't just the murder of a young woman, it was the slow, deliberate destruction of a love that had turned into possession and finally, into death. It was the night of September 28, 2011. The city of Surrey, British Columbia, was wrapped in its usual autumn chill mist rolling down from the hills. The kind that clings to your breath and your thoughts. On the 3rd floor of Simon Fraser University's parking garage, the fluorescent lights flickered over rows of parked cars, their shadows stretching long and silent. No one could have imagined that this quiet space, a place of study and routine, would soon become a crime scene, drenched in blood. Maple Batalia, 19 years old, had just finished a study session with her friends. She carried her notebooks close to her chest, her laughter echoing through the hallway, the laughter of someone who believed she had all the time in the world. She was exceptional, not only in her grades but in her spirit. Maple lived between 2 worlds, science and art. She wanted to heal the body, yet she was drawn to the beauty of performance. By 19, she had already modeled, starred in commercials, and earned a small part in a TV show. To those around her, Maple was the embodiment of promise, a girl whose dreams were just beginning to take shape. But that night, something felt off. Around 10 o'clock, students began to hear 3 sharp cracks echoing from the parking structure, the unmistakable sound of gunfire. Panic erupted. Some ducked under tables. Others ran toward the sound, calling 911. Officer Kevin Jeffrey arrived minutes later. The scene that met him would stay etched in his mind forever. Maple's body lying between 2 cars, her blood pooling across the wet pavement. She was still breathing faintly, irregularly clinging to life with the fragility of a candle in the wind.
We quickly located a female who was between 2 vehicles. There was a lot of blood around her. She had been shot 3 times, and she also sustained multiple stab wounds to the back of her head. There was hundreds of media.
She had been shot 3 times, and there were multiple stab wounds to the back of her head. A large knife, wiped clean of fingerprints, lay nearby. A single bullet casing glimmered under the light. Her purse and identification remained untouched. It was a chilling contradiction, a targeted attack, but not a robbery. Whoever had done this hadn't wanted her belongings. They'd wanted her. This was not random violence. It was personal, a crime born from emotion, not impulse. At the hospital, doctors fought to save her, but at 9:07 p.m., Maple Batalia was pronounced dead. When Officer Jeffrey told her mother, the woman didn't cry. She clutched his head, pressed her forehead against his, and whispered the words that would haunt him for years. "Bring me justice." From that moment, the case became more than an investigation. It became a promise. Detectives began combing through hours of security footage from around the university, desperate to trace Maple's final moments. Technology, they believed, would reveal what the human eye had missed. But then, something strange happened. Each time Maple or her friends walked near a camera, the footage shifted away, the lens turning, zooming out, as if on purpose. For a moment, it looked as though the killer had tampered with the system. But later, they discovered the truth. Those movements were part of the camera's automatic rotation schedule, a cruel twist of chance. By the time the lens turned back, it was too late. Only a dark pool of blood remained, glistening beneath the harsh yellow light. The girl who had once dreamed of saving lives had lost her own, taken by someone who couldn't save his own soul. From then on, investigators no longer asked who killed Maple Batalia. They asked why. Why does love, once rejected, turn so easily into something that kills? 3 days after the murder, the trail had grown cold. The blood had dried. The rain had washed away the scent of gunpowder, and the campus was quiet again. But for Sergeant Kevin Jeffrey, silence only meant that the truth was hiding deeper. He knew that behind every blurred image, every missing second of footage, there were faces in the shadows, and one of them belonged to Maple's killer. When investigators replayed the surveillance tapes, they noticed a group of 4 students leaving the Simon Fraser University library around 10 o'clock that night. 3 men and 1 young woman. The woman wore a dark top and white sandals, walking with that unmistakable confidence. It was Maple. Her laughter rippled faintly through the security mic as she headed down the staircase toward the parking garage. Beside her was Dylan, an old high school friend, and 2 other classmates. Frame by frame, the cameras followed their path out of the library, past the hallways, into the night. Then, at the corner leading to the 3rd floor, they vanished from view. 2 minutes later, gunfire. When Dylan was brought in for questioning, he looked exhausted, hollow. We left the library around 10.
He was studying with Maple earlier on, and they had left shortly after 1 o'clock.
He told detectives. When we reached the parking lot,
what happened then? Did you follow her to her car?
No.
Everyone split up. She said she was tired, that she wanted to go home early. So she walked to her car.
I left with the guys and she went another way.
Jeffrey noticed something strange in his tone, not guilt, but fear. When asked whether anyone might have wanted to hurt Maple, Dylan hesitated before replying.
Me and Maple were having a coffee, and this guy came in. He was upset with Maple, and he took a swing at me.
That single sentence changed everything. The case was no longer random. It had a direction. The next morning, detectives widened the search perimeter, analyzing footage from cameras outside the campus. It was then that an analyst spotted something, a white Dodge Charger, captured speeding away from the university at 10:48 p.m. The exact time the first emergency calls had been placed. The car's license plate was too blurred to read, but its shape, its taillights, its angular frame all distinctive. Officer Jeffrey felt the chill crawl up his spine.
Surveillance video, it shows the white Charger right after the murder coming down this road here, and it continued past here and then turned right onto 102 Avenue and then went towards King George. And you could see how fast this Charger was leaving, fleeing the scene. We couldn't see who was inside.
He rewound the tapes from earlier in the day, and there it was, the same white Dodge Charger, parked near the library 5 hours before the shooting. Engine off, headlights dim, someone inside waiting. No one waits 5 hours in silence unless they're hunting. Jeffrey muttered. It wasn't the act of a stranger. It was the patience of a predator. The Dodge became the investigation's focal point. Detectives combed through every car rental record in British Columbia, searching for anyone who had rented a vehicle of that make and color around that date. Hours turned into days until one name surfaced: Gursimar Bedi, a student at Simon Fraser University. But Bedi wasn't alone. When officers pulled footage from the rental office, they saw him standing beside another man, South Asian, tall, mid-20s, avoiding the camera's gaze. When the image was enhanced, Jeffrey froze. The second man wasn't a stranger. It was Gary Dhaliwal, Maple's ex-boyfriend. In that instant, the pieces fell into place. The wounds, the timing, the waiting, it all pointed to one truth. This was not a random act of violence. It was a hunt driven by obsession. Maple hadn't just been killed. She had been tracked, cornered, and executed by the man who once swore he loved her. When the name Gary Dhaliwal surfaced, the entire task force went silent. To Maple's friends, he wasn't a stranger, he was the charming ex-boyfriend. The man who once seemed perfect, but beneath that surface charm lived something darker, an obsession disguised as love. In the beginning, Gary had been attentive, romantic, the kind of boyfriend who waited after class, brought coffee every morning, texted her when she got home, just to make sure she was safe. But soon, those gestures turned into surveillance. He began questioning where she went, who she spoke to, why she laughed with other people. What looked like devotion slowly revealed itself as control. Maple confided in a friend once, "It feels like he's watching me all the time, even when he's not there." When she finally ended the relationship, Gary refused to let go. He showed up outside her home, sent desperate messages that turned into threats. And just days before her death, a security camera at a Tim Hortons coffee shop caught the moment when his anger boiled over. The footage showed Maple and Dylan sitting together at a table near the entrance, talking quietly. The door opened and Gary walked in. He didn't speak. He went straight to Dylan and punched him in the face. Maple jumped up, trying to calm him down, her hands shaking. She led Gary out of the cafe, and before leaving, she looked back toward the camera, her eyes wide, full of fear. The next day, Maple told a friend, "I think he's going to do something bad. I should get a restraining order," but she never got the chance. When police cross-referenced rental records, they confirmed that Gursimar Bedi, Gary's close friend, had rented the white Dodge Charger 2 days before the murder. On September 25, 2011, security footage from the rental office showed Gary right beside him, wearing a hoodie, keeping his head down. When the car was driven off the lot, Gary was the one behind the wheel. Sergeant Jeffrey described it later. This wasn't a moment of rage. This was a hunt. He waited, tracked, and attacked exactly when he knew no one would see. On the night of the crime, Gary parked the Charger near the Simon Fraser Library. He waited 4 hours. His friend Betty texted updates about Maple's location when she arrived, when she went into the library. When she left, Gary never moved. He just sat there, watching. At 10:22 p.m., when Maple walked to her car, Gary got out of the vehicle. He followed her into a blind spot, a corner where no security camera could see. 3 gunshots split the night, followed by the sound of a blade cutting through air. When investigators pieced it all together, a grim picture emerged. This was not about love or heartbreak. It was about ownership. Gary Dhaliwal didn't see Maple as a person. He saw her as something that belonged to him. He didn't kill her because he hated her. He killed her because he believed he had the right to decide whether she lived or died. That is not love, that is the pathology of control. Gary's story was no longer about jealousy. It was about power, possession, and the terrifying illusion that love gives you the right to destroy what you cannot keep. That night, under the flickering lights of a university parking lot, the hunter finally caught his prey, and the world lost Maple forever. Nearly 11 months after the murder, on a cold winter morning, the phone rang in Sergeant Kevin Jeffrey's office. On the other end, the prosecutor's voice was calm but firm. "We have enough evidence. It's time." 2 names followed Gary Dhaliwal and Gursimar Bedi. One, the obsessed ex-boyfriend. The other, the silent accomplice who had helped him hunt. Both were arrested on the same day in separate locations across Surrey. There was no resistance, no panic. Gary simply looked down at his cuffed hands and whispered, "It's over." Inside the interrogation room, the white fluorescent light cut across Gary's face, young, expressionless, almost cerne. Jeffrey leaned forward. "Why did you do it?" Gary stared back, unblinking. "She was mine. Maple didn't get to walk away from me to be with someone else. I gave her everything. No tears, no guilt." His voice was steady, detached, the voice of someone who believed his reasoning made sense. He described everything in chilling detail: how he bought the gun and the knife, how he had Betty rent the white Dodge Charger under his name, and how he waited for 4 hours in the parking lot for Maple to appear. He knew her schedule. He knew her habits. She walked to her car. I came up to talk. She panicked. We argued. I pulled the gun, Gary said flatly. I didn't mean to shoot the first time, but when she screamed, I lost control. 3 bullets. Then, a knife stabbed into the back of her head. A final act to silence the memory of her leaving him. Jeffrey listened in silence, his jaw tightening. It wasn't anger he felt, it was emptiness. The kind that comes from realizing you are face to face with a man who has replaced love with possession. Gary didn't talk about heartbreak. He talked about entitlement. In his mind, Maple's independence was the ultimate betrayal. Meanwhile, Gursimar Bedi said nothing. The evidence against him was thin, just the car rental record and the footage. But when forensic technicians examined the Dodge Charger, they made a breakthrough. A single spent shell casing lodged under the hood. Ballistic tests proved it was the same caliber as the bullets that killed Maple. That discovery sealed the case. Bedi eventually pleaded guilty to accessory to murder, receiving 22 months in prison. Gary Dhaliwal was sentenced to life in prison without parole, the harshest sentence in British Columbia. For a moment, Maple's family felt justice had finally arrived. But in March 2016, everything changed. The court reduced Gary's conviction to second-degree murder, allowing him to apply for parole after 21 years. At the hearing, Maple's mother sobbed, her voice breaking.
Why this is second degree? Why he has a parole after 21 years? No.
My daughter won't. Tell me, is that justice? Her father sat still, staring at the floor. The law says justice is served, he said quietly. But to us, justice died with her. The law can close a case, but it cannot close a wound.
Maple's death, it shook up the whole family. I miss everything about Maple.
Sometimes, justice is nothing more than a number, and numbers don't feel pain. The afternoon of Maple Batalia's funeral was heavy with rain, a gray, endless drizzle that blurred the city of Surrey into silence. More than 800 people came to say goodbye. Classmates, professors, neighbors, even strangers who had only seen her face on the news. They didn't come just to mourn a 19-year-old girl. They came to grieve the future that would never happen. On top of the casket lay a white dress, the one Maple once joked she'd wear on her wedding day. She said, "Mom, I'll be so happy in this dress." Her mother whispered through tears. No one had imagined that the same dress would become her burial gown. When a killer is sentenced, people say justice has been served. But justice cannot bring back a heartbeat. It cannot erase a mother's scream in the middle of the night. In her final interview, Maple's father said quietly, "They say, time heals. But time only makes her absence sharper. I don't want revenge. I just want my daughter to come home." Gary Dhaliwal will one day walk free, breathe, speak, maybe even love again. But for Maple's family, that day will feel like the crime repeating itself. Love doesn't kill. But when love turns into ownership, it breeds monsters. The true horror isn't in the weapon or the wound. It's in the moment someone believes they have the right to end another person's life in the name of love. Candlelight flickers at the memorial, glowing like scattered stars in the dark. The wind moves through Simon Fraser University, whispering through the halls where Maple once laughed. The courts declared justice. But for those left behind, this case has never truly ended. If you ever see signs of control, threats, or possessive jealousy disguised as love, don't stay silent. Speak up, reach out, ask for help. Because silence is where tragedies like Maple's begin.